These have been some really good webinars. Again, Keto's webinar on wetland regulation, Ann's webinar on feasible and prudent alternatives just really have been tremendous. Chad Fazel's webinar on GIS always blows everybody away. So to do it again with streams now. So we're excited to have Bethany join us. So take it away, Bethany.
All right. Thank you, Todd, for the introduction. Let me work on sharing my screen here. All right, and I'm going to also go ahead and just turn off my video for the presentation to kind of save on bandwidth. So good afternoon, everybody. As Todd said, I'm Bethany Matousek, and I'm the Inland Lakes and Streams Program Coordinator in the Water Resources Division at EGLE. And today, I'm going to talk about stream identification. And so sort of a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about. I wanted to talk about the value of stream resources and, why stream identification is important. Go over the stream definitions under Part 301 of Michigan's Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Identify some of the characteristics of stream channels, and then provide a number of examples of streams and non-streams, and also difficult stream calls. I'm going to talk about documenting the occurrence of a stream and kind of how to do that and what's important. And then I'll talk a little bit about EGLE jurisdictional determination. So part 301, Inland Lakes and Streams of Michigan's Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act protects inland waters by regulating work in inland lakes and streams. Michigan has over 36,000 miles of streams and more than 11,000 lakes and ponds. And these all are providing fish and wildlife habitat and recreational opportunities. These natural resources are a large part of Michigan's economy and the reason that many people choose to live and vacation here. Tourism is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Michigan and accounts for hundreds of thousands of jobs in the state. Much of the tourism is centered around recreational opportunities and access to a vast array of water resources. Michigan's NREPA, and specifically Part 301 of the Act, exists to protect these valuable water resources from impairment. So why are rivers and streams important, and why is it important to know how to identify streams? In order to protect the economic, social, and environmental benefits that rivers and streams provide to the people of Michigan, such as recreational opportunities, drinking water, stream habitat, irrigation, industrial cooling, energy, we need to be able to define and identify those resources. And to preserve these benefits, it's essential to protect not only our larger rivers and streams, but also the vast network of smaller tributaries and drainages that directly affect the overall health of our watersheds. So the US has over 3.4 million miles of streams, and 59% of those total stream miles are non-perennial and are dry for part of the year. So just to kind of explain this slide, the darker the color, the larger percentage of the total stream length in the watershed is comprised of non-perennial streams. So you can see, those darker colors where you have, over 80% non-perennial stream channels, those are heavily dominated in the arid West, some of the Great Plain areas. And then if you look at Michigan specifically, in at least a third of the state, the map indicates that non-perennial streams make up somewhere between 40 and 80% of the total stream miles. So just kind of the general points or the general takeaway from this I thought was interesting is that, many streams don't have water in them all the time. A lot of these streams make up a large portion of the stream miles in watersheds, and they're a really important part of watershed health. So these non-perennial streams are often located in the headwaters or upper extent of a watershed and can make up a large percentage of the total length in a watershed, as was indicated by the previous slide. Healthy headwater systems can reduce the amount of erosion and sediment, flooding, and nutrients and other pollutants. And they also provide insects and fish and decaying organic matter to nourish the downstream segments. And these things provide benefits to Michigan residents, like reduced costs for dredging and water treatment, improved recreational opportunities, reduced local flooding and other downstream flooding, prevention of excessive erosion, and sustained biological diversity. So when these hydrologic and biological processes of these smaller headwater non-perennial streams are disrupted, it takes a toll on the cumulative health of the whole river system and can impact the benefits that these systems provide. So now I want to talk a little bit about the definition of a stream under parts 301 and 303 of NREPA. So under the statute, a stream is defined as a river, stream, creek, drain, or any other body of water with defined banks, a bed, and visible evidence of continued flow or continued occurrence of water. It includes the St. Mary's, St. Clair, and Detroit rivers, and it may or may not be serving as a drain as defined in the Drain Code of 1956. Changes to the definitions of waters of the United States do not affect Michigan's statute. And because Michigan administers its own 404 program, this ensures clarity, consistency, and predictability in the face of changing federal interpretations. Throughout this presentation, I'm mostly going to be using the word stream, but this term is sort of all-encompassing, and it's interchangeable with river, creek, drain. So I just wanted to say that. Some other things to note is that streams can be artificially created. So digging a channel or concentrating stormwater runoff, over time, it could result in the creation of a regulated feature. Another thing to point out is that many historic streams have been channelized and relocated. So when you see, a straight linear ditch, at some point in time, that could have been a natural stream channel or a network of smaller stream channels that have kind of been concentrated and relocated. But as long as the feature has a bed, defined banks, and a visible evidence of flow, it is a stream. Michigan statute has a clear definition, and the statutory language hasn't changed in many years. Another definition that I wanted to call your attention to under Part 301 is the ordinary high water mark. This is a mark on the landscape that separates upland from bottomland. This mark persists through successive changes in water levels. And basically it is where the presence and action of the water is so common or recurrent that it changes the character of the bottomland and marks it distinctly from the upland. The definition, the Part 301 includes a definition of bottomland to be the area that lies below the ordinary high water mark. This area, this bottomland, may or may not be covered by water, and is, when we're talking about streams, it can also be considered the bed of the stream. One of the significant things about the ordinary high water mark on a stream channel is that wetlands are considered contiguous if they are within 500 feet of the ordinary high water mark of an inland lake or stream. So these are some characteristics you should look for when you're looking at a feature to determine whether or not it is a stream. Not all of these characteristics will necessarily be present in every stream channel, and they may be stronger and more apparent or weaker and less apparent depending on the type of stream, the position in the watershed, or the time of year. So one of the characteristics to look for is an ordinary high water mark, a natural line that's impressed upon the bank of that channel. Shelving that's located along the channel margins. Changes in the character of the soil or the substrate. So, you know, the soil or substrate along the bed of your channel is looking different from the soil that you're seeing in the banks. An absence of terrestrial vegetation within that channel where that continued occurrence of water or visible evidence of flow is located. The presence of organic litter and debris, fine silts and sediments that may be deposited by flowing water, a rack line, so a line of debris that's left by flowing water or higher water. You can see this in leaves or small or larger twigs that are kind of left by high water or oriented in the direction of flow. Vegetation that's absent or bent or matted down indicates flow in that area. You want to examine the bed for sediment sorting. Can you see different areas where you have larger substrates as opposed to sands and finer silts? The disturbance or washing away of leaf litter can indicate flow in a channel. Areas that are scoured and may have some additional depth, or areas where you see deposition of fine material. Observed flow events, a bed and banks, water staining on rocks, or absence of like moss and lichens that form kind of a line on the rocks can indicate a presence of water below that, and changes in plant community from, you know, terrestrial to more aquatic plants. So you want to look for these characteristics over a distance and not just in a short reach or a short area. And you may have to use these characteristics to determine where a regulated stream begins. And this is often difficult, but just use your best professional judgment looking at all these different characteristics and kind of weighing the evidence. In most cases, a channel is considered a stream for its entire length downstream from the point of beginning. So now we'll talk some more about what is needed to determine a stream, a bed, banks, and evidence of flow or continued occurrence of water. So you have your stream bed. This is your channel bottom. It typically carries the normal base flow or low water flow. It's usually clear of vegetation, especially terrestrial type vegetation. And typically that substrate that's considered the bed is going to be different from the upland soil. So you're going to see some scouring, some sorting of materials. And when you look or feel that substrate in the bottom and you compare it to that bank, you're looking for differences between those materials. The indicators of a stream bed may diminish or become fragmented upstream as the flow becomes non-perennial. And then characteristics can also be diminished or obscured due to disturbance. So here are some more photographs of a stream bed, and these are showing some characteristics of material sorting, scour, deposition, You can see some differences between like the banks of this channel and what you see in the bottom or along the bed. In all three instances, you see an absence of terrestrial vegetation. In these photographs, you can also see some coarser grained materials that have been separated out from finer grained materials. You see some deposition along the banks. You can see some scouring and some exposed roots. You see leaf litter that has been moved out of the center of the channel, but that's still visible on the banks and in the upland areas. And then in some areas of the state that are characterized by low slopes with underlying silt or clay soil types, the feature of a bed may not be as pronounced. So for example, like Monroe County, this is an example from Wayne County where, you know, you're not going to see gravel and sand in the bottom of this bed because the substrate that's sort of underlying and the soils have more of a finer grain. So, but what you are going to see is some of this scouring that's present in the bottom of this channel. So stream banks are the rising land at the edge of a water body. It's basically the margins of the channel or the lateral constraints of flow during low flow or base flow conditions. Of course, during flood flows, that water is going to spill out onto your floodplain. But during those typical flows, your stream banks are going to contain that flow. As with the stream bed, indicators for stream banks may diminish or become fragmented upstream as a channel goes further up into the watershed or as a channel becomes non-perennial. These stream banks are often influenced by the slope that's present and also what types of streamside vegetation you might have. And then stream flow. So a visible evidence of continued flow or a continued occurrence of water. So if you have bed and banks that are developing, typically these are evidence of stream flow because that's often what it takes to develop the bed and banks of a stream, is to have some flow at a long enough time of the year that it starts to develop those other characteristics. Other things that you're looking for are scour and deposition, that sorting of bed materials, the absence of terrestrial vegetation or leaf litter, or the arrangement of sticks and detritus in the direction of flow. So stream flow can be perennial, meaning that it flows all year round, or it could be non-perennial, where it flows for only certain times of the year. And this can be seasonally or after significant rain events. The strength or weakness of stream characteristics is influenced by stream flow and also the time of year when a field survey is done. Perennial streams will typically have stronger and more apparent characteristics, whereas the characteristics seen in non-perennial channels may be weaker and or more intermittent. In Michigan, stream regulation does not depend on whether flow is perennial or non-perennial. So non-perennial channels, some non-perennial channels may contain flowing water for only part of the year, typically flow during the wet season when the stream bed may be below the water table or when snowmelt from the surrounding uplands provides sustained flow. And flow may vary greatly with stormwater runoff. So you may have a little bit of flow and then you get rains and it increases the flow. Other non-perennial channels may flow only in direct response to precipitation. So they may typically flow only during and shortly after large precipitation events. The stream bed may always be above the water table and stormwater runoff is the primary water source. So the amount of flow in the channel at any specific time depends on hydrologic inputs and outputs. So for your inputs, you're going to have discharge from upstream, and that's going to depend on, sort of the size of your drainage area that's upstream, your land use. You're going to have inputs that are discharges from groundwater. So your groundwater is going to be infiltrating into that stream. And then also you're going to have precipitation and overland flow that's going to contribute to the inputs of that flow in that stream channel. And then, conversely, you're going to have outputs. So you're going to have the discharge to downstream. You're going to have groundwater percolation. So, your stream may be losing water if your water table is below the bed of the stream channel. And then you're also going to have evapotranspiration. And that is going to be influenced by the surface area of your stream channel that's exposed and also your canopy cover. So this stream flow really exists on a wide continuum. On one end of the spectrum, you're gonna have perennial channels that are wetter, that have your larger stream channels. They persist through the whole year. There's lots of water and flow during all times of the year. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, you're gonna have your non-perennial channels that are drier. They're maybe in the upper extent of your watershed, or they don't have very much drainage area to support flow in them. They may only flow for a few weeks out of the year. And then you're going to have everything in between that. You're going to have some channels that have flow for a number of months. And then you're going to have channels that are closer to this drier condition. So I'm going to go through a number of examples. But first, I do want to put out just a disclaimer about photos and the photos that are used in the presentation. Photos of streams alone can't tell the whole story. It's difficult to capture important characteristics in a single photo. Stream identification should be done in the field, and it should be contextual, and many factors should be taken into account. So a decision to call a feature a stream should be made using multiple lines of evidence and based on a preponderance of that evidence. So not all of those factors will be evident in the photo examples. So we're going to kind of start out with wetter perennial channels, and we're going to kind of move through the continuum to some of the drier channels, and then to features that are not streams. So the photo on the left, this is from the Upper Peninsula, a late spring photo. This is a bedrock channel with a heavily forested riparian, but you can definitely, see that this is a stream and that it has bed and banks and evidence of flow. On the right, similar Upper Peninsula, late spring. This is a different type of channel, sandbed dominated, and again, a forested riparian. But you can definitely see the bed of this channel, and you can see that the substrate is different from the upland. You can see scour, absence of vegetation, absence of leaves. And I did try and include examples from all over Michigan. So on the left, you have a county drain in Ingham County. This channel is enclosed upstream. Downstream, it's a channelized urban and agricultural drain. But in this section, it's opened and it's very natural. It has a forested riparian, and you can see evidence of the bed in this photograph, as well as channel banks And then on the right is more of a wetland channel in Newaygo County. And in these types of channels, when you have, dominated by wetland vegetation, the margins and the edges of the banks may be a little bit more difficult to pinpoint in some locations. The banks tend to be very porous in these types of systems, but you can definitely see a channel that is going through this wetland where you have enough flow and presence of water that it's, there's an absence of vegetation in that area, and you're going to find different substrate at the bottom of that channel. So on the left, this is a sinuous, low slope kind of wetland type channel. It's got a wide floodplain. It's small. It's only a couple feet wide. You can see in the bottom the sorting of the materials in the bed. There's gravel and sand and silt substrates distributed throughout the channel. It's kind of a narrower and deeper channel, and this is in the low-lying area directly adjacent to Grand Traverse Bay. And then on the right, you have a larger stream. It's wider and shallower. It's got a pretty high wood count. It's a sand bed dominated stream, and this one is a cold water trout stream. So then we'll move into some more examples that are non-perennial channels. In this picture on the left, you have a higher slope forested ravine system. This system has been heavily impacted by stormwater runoff. And so, you only have seasonal flow, but when you do have flow, it is very high flow and intense flow. So it's moving a lot of the substrate around. There's a lot of scour, a lot of deposition. And then at times of the year, because of some of that excessive sediment, you're going to see a very intermittent channel longitudinally. So you're going to see pools that maybe have water in them, but then shallower areas like your riffles may only have a trickle or may completely be dry. And then on the right, we have a small stream in Antrim County. It's narrower and deeper, but you can see the difference in the substrate in the bottom. It's a sand to gravel bed. And then you do have some amount of disturbance that's happening because of the mowing, and that's influencing sort of the stream side vegetation and maybe influencing the form and the banks of this channel. So on the left here, again, you have higher slope system. This is a step pool system that occurs in a ravine. So you can see from this landscape position, this is going to be your low-lying area. This is sort of logically where you're going to get stormwater and runoff that's going to concentrate in this channel. It's a heavily forested riparian. The bed is dominated by sand and cobbles, and this channel is also heavily influenced by stormwater runoff. Then on the right, this is kind of a different season. This is a winter season. You can see ice in this smaller headwater channel. There's some flow that's happening underneath the ice. So depending on what time of year you're out there, you may have to look for that. It's got some slope to it, and this is also a channel that's in a heavily forested riparian area. So on the left here, you have a stream that's in Monroe County. It's in the Lake Plain area of Michigan. It's got a very, very low slope and very fine grained sediments. This is a slow draining stream channel. It's very close to Lake Erie, but you can still see some scour and some sorting of bed materials. You can see an absence of vegetation. And sometimes that absence of vegetation could be caused by standing water. So, you know, this also sort of demonstrates the need to make sure that you're going upstream and downstream and looking for these characteristics over a distance of stream channel. And then on the right, you have a county drain in Genesee County. This is a heavily forested riparian. It's a very low slope. And for most of the year, there's no water in this channel, but it certainly does contain water, and it does flow at times of the year. So now we're sort of moving into the even drier spectrum of the non-perennial streams. On the left, this is a very small drainage to the Tequamanon River. I suspect this only flows in response to rain and runoff during rain events. It has a higher slope. It has very small little step pools that are in this system. One thing to note is the position in the landscape. You know, there's been enough water flowing in this channel to form these small stream banks, but it's definitely located at a low point in the landscape where you're going to have concentration of that overland flow and stormwater runoff when it rains into this small little channel that goes directly to the river. And then on the right, this is a channel up in Marquette County. This is quite a bit bigger than the small channel on the left, but this is another channel that I suspect typically flows in response to stormwater runoff and overland flow. Again, note the landscape position. You can see in the bottom of the channel some of the scouring around some of the rocks. You can see some scour around the wood. And then you can also see sort of an absence of leaf litter in some of those areas where it's scoured, and an absence of vegetation just in this channel bottom in general. Here is also a very small non-perennial channel. And sometimes, I mean, you may have to visit a site more than once. You might, you know, if you're having a really hard time, if you're able to go out after it rains, where you might be able to observe some flow, or if you can go in if you have enough time that you're able to go in a different season. But you can see in this example, people are standing on what are very small stream banks. You can see some sinuosity to the channel. You can see some scour, exposed roots along the margins. You can see movement of some of the organic debris and material. And you can see an absence in this path. You can see an absence of the terrestrial vegetation that's located and observed on the stream banks. So I have a few examples of some more like wetland type streams. Both of these photos are from the same stream. This would be a very difficult call in the summer. There's likely not water here in the summer months. And so what you're going to observe is, you know, a depression that doesn't have water in it. But you can see that there is some sinuosity to this channel. Since we're out here when there is some water, you can see that flow is moving the leaves in this channel and kind of stacking them up. So there's movement of those leaf packs. And you can also see that there's an absence of woody vegetation in the channel. And again, you know, in wetland streams, it may be difficult to find a solid continuous stream bank as the margins are made up of wetland vegetation. But that consistent flow creates a channel through the wetland where there is a bed and absence of vegetation. This example is from Cascade Township in Kent County. These photos are all from the same site, but different locations along the stream channel. So where this stream begins, you have kind of this bowl that's located at a higher elevation. It's a perched wetland. And at some point, there's a low spot where the water starts to concentrate and flow out of this wetland. And so that's this picture. So you start to, as that water concentrates and as the slope starts to increase, you're seeing some small channel banks. You've got a channel bed. It's moving the leaf litter. There's an absence of vegetation there. And then as the slope increases, and you can see the forest here kind of opens up. It's not as heavily forested as in this photo. The channel banks and the beds start to become more distinct. And this water then flows down gradient to a ponded area. So here's some examples of features that are not streams. So in these examples, there's no bed, there's no small low flow channel in the bottom. Obviously, it's difficult to get a picture of features that are absent. So, and there's no real difference in the soil or substrate from the banks to the bottom of this feature. It's vegetated throughout, and likely there's not enough water at the surface or enough slope to form a flowing channel for a long enough period of time to create those stream characteristics. And here again, here are some streams that are not streams. That doesn't make sense, but not streams. These are roadside ditches. Here again, the vegetation and leaf packs are visible across the bottoms of the channel. You have really low slopes. You're not seeing surface water for a long enough period of time to form those stream characteristics. Could you maybe see a little bit of scour in the bottom of these channels, or could you possibly see some sand and gravel? Maybe you may see some very small areas of that. Some of that sand and gravel could be coming from the rolled shoulder and washing into that bottom of the channel. So you have to, like I said, you have to use context and you have to look at the surrounding area. But you need to examine the entire length and you need to weigh the evidence. So in these situations, there's not a preponderance of evidence to make a call that these meet the definition of a stream. So here's another example. These are not streams. This is a stormwater swale. The same feature is visible at different locations in all three of these photos, but you can see grass along the bottom of the channel. You can see some signs that there has been standing water, but there's not really any evidence to indicate flow. You don't really see areas where the channel bottom is scoured, and the channel bottom is not significantly different from the surrounding area. Again, some photographs of some larger stormwater swales or stormwater conveyances. Here, there is no discernible bed, nothing to indicate flow. You even have, mature trees that are growing in the bottom of that channel. Another example, again, grass is growing across this shallow swale. You're not seeing indicators of a bed. There's, standing leaves that are there. You're not seeing sorting of materials. there's nothing to indicate that this water is flowing or flowing for a long enough period of the year that it's creating bed features. These are a couple examples of stormwater runoff. These are short segments of gully erosion or field furrows. These features are not persistent upon the landscape. They're temporary. And then I'm going to talk about some additional complex situations where sometimes identifying stream channels is difficult. And I'm going to talk a little bit about maintained drains. Headwater streams is another complex situation. Streams that are along roadsides, and then disturbed streams. So, and this can be historic disturbance or more recent disturbance. So maintained drains, let's talk about those first. Stream characteristics typically develop over a long period of time as channels experience various flow events. And these characteristics can often be disturbed by human activities, obscuring or weakening their strength and making them difficult to identify. And maintained drains are a great example of this. So in this slide at the top, this graphic is basically showing a depiction of how a disturbed channel evolves to try to get back to its natural form. So up here at the top, this is sort of a cross section of what the natural channel would look like. It has a small floodplain. It has access to the floodplain here. And then if it is maintained as a drain, typically these are trapezoidal channels. They are dug out so that they are over widened and over deepened. And doing this cuts off access to the floodplain. And this, I mean, typically this is obviously done to, move stormwater away from areas where humans don't want the stormwater, or to drain areas for better agriculture. So this over widening and over deepening moves the channel away from where it naturally wants to be. And so that channel will then try to seek its natural form. And the way that it starts to do that is it starts first to degrade, and it starts to form a small channel in the bottom of that trapezoidal ditch. Because you've cut off the access to the floodplain, you have a lot more stream forces that are going to be acting against the bed of that channel and the banks of that channel. So that water flowing through there is going to try to regain that access to a floodplain. And the way that it's going to try to do that next is that it's going to start eroding the toe of the slope. There's a lot of shear stress that's going to be put on the bottom of that channel. So you're going to get this erosion at the toe, which is going to lead to this bank material slumping down into the bottom of this channel. This erosion and slumping is going to lead to an excessive amount of sediment and material in the channel. And then the channel is not going to be able to move that sediment out. But what it's going to do is that material is going to aggrade on the bottom, and you're going to start to see like a smaller low flow channel develop in that aggraded material. But you're going to continue to see erosion happening on the banks and more material slumping in. And then after a period of time, if it's left undisturbed, that channel is going to try to form back into its natural condition, where it has it's basically built back access to a floodplain. So, you know, if you look at this picture on the right, this kind of shows a channel where this has happened and these stream characteristics have been disturbed. So these characteristics are going to be more or less visible depending on where the stream is at in this evolutionary cycle that's depicted in this graphic. And the timing of that channel evolution and how obvious the stream indicators are or are not is going to depend on the amount of flow, the sediment supply, the slope of that channel, and also how frequently it's maintained. So in this photograph on the right, you can see that there is a small channel that's starting to develop and get back to somewhat of a natural condition in this channel. So you're going to be able to see some stream characteristics in this channel where it is in that evolutionary process. And so here are some other examples of some maintained drains. On the left, you have a very recently dredged channel where the indicators of bed and bank have been very disturbed. So, you know, you may have some difficulty in a situation like this, finding those indicators of bed and banks. On the right, you have a historically dredged channel. The indicators have been disturbed, and then, you know, sort of due to the low slope and the amount of time of the year that this channel would have flow, these disturbed indicators are still weak in some spots. So you may really have to look to make the call about whether this is a stream channel. Here's another example of disturbance in a stream channel, and this is specifically historic disturbance. So this channel would be a difficult call to make. This is a county drain. It's been historically dredged and channelized, but this channel definitely flows for some time after a rain event. It's difficult to see from just the photo, but there is scour and absence of terrestrial vegetation in the bottom of this channel. And what I can say about this is that, you know, if you're looking at this, you're going to need to use multiple characteristics and a preponderance of the evidence to try to determine whether this meets the definition of a stream. And you would want to use other tools as well. So maps, leaf-off aerials, drainage maps, those things could also assist you in your determination. And then here's an example of more recent disturbance. So this is a non-perennial channel in Allegan County. It's a tributary to the North Branch of the Macatawa. This channel was farmed through and planted, and the bed and banks are very obscured by that disturbance. So you can see in these aerial photos, in these out of the growing season, it's very obvious that there's a channel that flows through here. But then when these crops are planted and you're in the growing season, the evidence of that channel, even in an aerial photograph, is much obscured. So you can imagine, you know, what this is like trying to identify this channel when you're on the ground and there are crops that are planted there. These photographs were taken while there were not crops, but you can still see that there is definitely evidence of the channel in this field. It's just more difficult to see. But this is a blue line on a topo map. It's visible on some of the aerial photos. And if you look upstream from where this disturbance is happening, you will find a channel as well as downstream. And then these are some photos of those same sites at a time of year when there is water that's actually, you can see in this channel. So time of year definitely does make a difference, as well as, you know, using some of the other tools that are at your disposal to look for these stream channels and where a stream channel might be located and where you should look for the features and the characteristics. And then streams along roadsides. So in many instances, streams have been relocated to be alongside roads. This reduces the need for more, you know, culvert or bridge road crossings. So in a lot of cases, you'll find channels that have been relocated next to the road. So when you see a channel next to the road, it might not always be just a ditch that's carrying stormwater. It could be a channel that was either naturally there or has been relocated to be there. So, you know, you can see in this aerial photo on the bottom left, you know, it seems fairly obvious that this channel used to cross the road and probably go on the other side, but they've channelized it and they've had it go only on the south side of this road. So it looks very straightened. And I also wanted to say a word about enclosed or buried stream channels. So underground enclosed streams are still considered streams under Part 301. If the waterway met the definition of a stream before it was enclosed, or the area above the enclosure meets the definition of a stream, then the enclosure does not remove Part 301 jurisdiction. This is a stream channel in Monroe County that goes under a large factory building for quite some distance. And, you know, these enclosed streams, wetlands that continue to have a surface water or a groundwater connection to those enclosed streams are still considered contiguous wetlands. And any stream enclosure done in violation of the statute does not deregulate any wetlands that were contiguous prior to the regulation. So let's talk, I only have a few slides left, but let's talk about documenting the occurrence of a stream. So before you go out in the field, you do want to do an in-office review. You want to look at maps. I like to use Wetlands Map Viewer. You can look at wetlands on Wetlands Map Viewer. You can turn on NHD layers. You can turn on topo maps. Other maps that you could look at are drainage maps that maybe are provided by the County Drain Commissioner. You can use LiDAR images where they're available. You want to look at aerial photographs, and you want to look at multiple aerial photographs. So you want to look at historical aerials in different seasons. You want to look for leaf-off images. You can see the channels much better with leaf-off imagery. Google Earth, NearMap, these are both good sites to use. And then you want to use any available photographs that you already have of the site. Maybe people have been out there before you and taken photographs. So you want to review those before you go out. So here's just kind of an example of an in-office review. The topo is from Wetlands Map Viewer, and then the aerial is a historic leaf-off aerial from Google Earth from 2017. So you can see this is the Shiawassee River, and you can see that the contour lines kind of show that this is a little bit higher elevation, and then you kind of go down in elevation to get down to the river. So you want to look on your topos for these contour lines that are less than 90 degrees. Sometimes this could indicate that there would be a draw here, and a stream channel could form in those low-lying elevations where you might get some concentration of water. Here you have kind of a short segment of blue line on a stream. So you want to look around. You've got some contour lines that indicate that you've got some slope here. And what is upstream of this appears to be wetlands. So there could be some connection here between this wetlands and this lower slope where it's indicating that there's a blue line and then a depressional area. So if you were going to go out, you would want to kind of mark this on your map or mentally, and you would say, I'm going to look on this site, I'm going to look in these areas for stream channels. And then to sort of further support that, you're going to want to look at these aerials leaf off. You've got this wetland woodlot over here, and you've got a pond, and you can see in this aerial that you've got this linear feature here that connects those two. So you've got vegetation. You can't really tell from this aerial if there is a stream there or not, but this is where you're going to want to look when you go out in the field. You're going to want to look at this linear feature to see if it has characteristics of a stream channel. And then this feature up here, you can see that there is a small little channel that kind of goes through these woods and then out to the river here. So when you're on site, this is another area that you're going to want to go to, and you're going to want to examine to see if there's a stream and whether it meets the definition. So then once you're in the field, you want to make sure that you're using that information from your in-office review of the maps and aerial photos. You want to look at the site topography. You want to inspect low-lying areas and areas where you have linear lines of trees or vegetation. You want to look for field indicators then of bed, banks, and evidence of flow. And you want to do this for some distance up and down channel. You don't want to look in just one spot. And you can't tell from the top of the bank. You've got to get down into the feature and examine the characteristics more closely, especially on some of these features where it's difficult or hard to tell. You're looking maybe at a non-perennial channel. You've got to really look in the bottom of that channel for evidence of scour, bed materials, small banks. And then you want to take photographs and field notes to document your observations. Using a ruler or another object of known size in the photo for perspective is valuable. You want to record the locations of your photographs. And then you want to take good photographs. So what's a good photograph? You want to make sure that you're considering like the glare and the light reflections. If you're trying to capture the bed of a channel, you want to make sure that vegetation is not obscuring the thing in the photo that you want to take a picture of. And you want to look at your photo exposure. You want to make sure that your photo is not too dark and that the characteristics that you're trying to photograph won't show up. You want to make sure that you take photographs and notes of any distinguishing characteristics of the bed and the banks. And hey, I mean, all of our phones now are equipped to take video. So if you're there at a time of the year when flow is present in that channel, go ahead and take a small video clip of that flow. Flow is something that's very difficult to capture in a still photograph. And then GPSing stream endpoints if they're applicable. I mean, not all locations that you go to will have a stream channel that ends somewhere. But if that applies to your situation, you want to make sure that you make the call of where that stream channel begins, and you want to document that. And then this is my final slide. I wanted to say just a few words about EGLE jurisdictional determinations. So during an on-site pre-app meeting, EGLE district staff will look for streams on the site, and they'll specifically look at any locations called out by the applicant or consultant as potentially being streams. The staff will determine whether the feature meets the definition of a stream under Part 301. And then this information will be included in the pre-application follow-up letter. District staff may request assistance with the difficult stream determinations from the Wetlands, Lakes, and Streams unit, and we would be happy to assist district staff with that. And that is it. That's all I have for you today.
Very good. Thank you, Bethany. Raising the bar again. Yeah, exceptional. If you've got any questions, type them into the Q&A box. Oh, we're getting some clappy hands, so that's good. I'm going to participate.
You're going to do some clappy hands too?
Yes.
So I wanted to cover a couple things. We did try to answer a few really specific questions in the chat, but I wanted to circle back to a couple of them. And one of the questions was a question about the difference between bankful and ordinary high. I think we're interested at EGLE in doing some bankful training. So I don't want to confuse the issue today. They are different. But then Bethany, I also provided a link to the ordinary high watermark videos. I was wondering if you could, because you did cover that a little bit in your presentation. Do you want to give a shout out to that and kind of explain what's covered in those? They're a little more lake oriented, I think, but if you could just talk for a second.
Yeah, sure. Those videos it's a whole series of short videos. I think there's 6 of them. And they talk about sort of the regulatory importance of the ordinary high water mark. They talk about how to identify the ordinary high water mark in the field, how to identify and measure the ordinary high water mark on difficult sites. I think one of them talks a little bit about legal lake levels and ordinary high water mark. But what I will say about the ordinary high water mark is that it is created mostly by your base flow or your low flow. The ordinary high water mark is kind of associated with the bed of that channel and sort of the break point between your stream banks and your stream bed. The ordinary high water mark is a regulatory line. EGLE regulates activities that are below the ordinary high water mark. Bank full is different. It is the point where water begins to overflow the banks at a flow that's between the 1 and 2 year event. On average, somewhere around the 1.5 to 1.7 year event. And so that is, that is a channel and a demarcation of the channel that's going to carry the channel forming flow. So I don't want to get too much into it, but
no, I agree. That was good though. That was a really good, yeah, that was a really good summary. Thank you, Bethany. And I don't see any new questions. We'll give people here a second, and then we'll be considerate of people's time and let them go here in a couple minutes. There was also a question about streams that start, disappear, and then reappear. You did kind of cover that in general. Once you start at the point of beginning of a stream, it'll usually be a stream, downstream of that. I thought that was a really good point. There are cases, and my answer to that is it really depends on the site, right? Are you saying it disappears because it goes into a wetland? Does it disappear because it's enclosed? In some part of the states, there's actually geology there. So I think, that's not a common thing. And I guess I would just work with your district staff person if you have a situation like that, your EGLE district staff person.
Yeah, I would say there are some instances where you might have a perennial stream that disappears for segments, but probably the situation you're going to encounter more is an intermittent stream where it is intermittent longitudinally. So at certain times of year, that flow is going to be continuous through that length of linear channel. but when you get sort of toward the drier end of that spectrum, what you might find is, like I described in that one slide, where you have pools, and then you might have a riffle that's dry, and then you might have pools. And so your flow is not only intermittent seasonally, but it might be intermittent sort of longitudinally up and down your channel. And in those cases, that whole feature is a continuous stream channel.
Okay. I think we're, oh, okay. We're getting some, I think, ag related kind of questions here, Bethany, and I think, again, we might have to say, you know, it's kind of a site-by-site call, but one of the attendees was interested in about the furrow in the field, and how is that different from a stream? Can you kind of cover maybe your stream characteristics point there, what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think, you know, part of that evaluation is, you know, the context of the situation and where you see that furrow forming, where you see that gully erosion forming. I mean, we don't want to call those things stream channels. They're not persistent on the landscape typically. Oftentimes they might be temporary, but you're not going to see sort of that same development of a bed for a long enough distance that we can say that's a stream channel.
Okay. Brent, we do have another question about drain tile discharge, and I think you covered this a little bit. I would compare it to your slides about stormwater discharges. Any thoughts about the stream characteristics on that?
Like where you have drain tiles that are coming into a larger drain?
Yeah, so I'm thinking it's the same answer. You're going to be looking for whether there are characteristics of that. And I think typically, like you were saying with your last point, that you're not going to see those stream characteristics there, unless somehow that discharge is actually a buried stream, because I guess that could be possible too.
Yeah. And I mean, if that was the case, you know, we would have to really look for, you know, for evidence that that was the case. Drain tiles, I guess, you know, in my mind, you know, when you have like agricultural fields that are drain tiled, that is surface water runoff that would be needing to go somewhere anyway. This is just, you know, these tiles are directing it there more quickly. And so typically those drain tiles do go into a larger either drain or, you know, some kind of channel. And then, you know, those flows typically then concentrate, and they're producing evidence of a bed and banks in the bottom of that larger channel.
Well, thanks, Bethany. I think we'll answer the rest of these questions. They're pretty specific. We'll answer them directly with the folks asking them. Thank you so much. And I think Nicole's going to close us out.
Sure thing. Thank you, Bethany and EGLE, for presenting on stream identification. And thank you to all attendees for viewing this jointly sponsored MWA EGLE webinar. A survey and certificate will be emailed to you within the next few weeks. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.
Hey, Nicole, I think we have some folks who aren't leaving, but I don't want to close the webinar yet, so we can answer questions. Is there a way to go back basically to the training part?
To the training part. Do you want me to leave Zoom up to answer these questions, or is this something?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I can keep Zoom up here, and you just let me know when questions are answered.
Okay. Oh, more people are leaving here. Hey, Nicole, we're all set.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. Bye.